Welcome to TE Pedagogy Power Ups by Things Education, where you get quick tips or cheat codes to power up your education game.
There's a lot of conversation around phonics, grammar, and reading comprehension for the early years, but not enough about vocabulary. So, in today's video, let's talk about vocabulary learning in the early years and about strategies that can be used for active learning of vocabulary. This means that students don't just get passively exposed to different words and memorize them over time, but actively learn their meaning. Let's start with why vocabulary learning is so important in the first place. So there are many studies that have shown that any reader, whether you're young or you're old, needs to know at least 90 to 95% of words in any text for them to comprehend it completely. This means that if a story for a kindergarten student or a grade 1 student is about 100 words long, that student should know at least 90 to 95 words in that text and be unfamiliar with only about 5 to 6 words in order for comprehension to take place. So, spending time on teaching vocabulary is extremely important. But what is equally important is ensuring that you're using strategies that actively involve students in the learning of those meanings, instead of just passively memorizing them. Let's look at some of the traditional vocabulary teaching strategies that we've been using so far, and then some enhanced teaching strategies that will ensure active learning of these meanings. A vocabulary teaching strategy that is very popular across classrooms in India currently is the use of word walls. Now, teachers display new words on these word walls for students to look at, read, continuously be exposed to. But this is not enough, and that's because actively using these words will ensure that these words become part of students' vocabulary and not just looking at them. So teachers should definitely use word walls, but that's just the first step. Another traditional teaching strategy is definitions. Teachers either dictate definitions to students and they write them down, or students are asked to look up the dictionary and learn those meanings. Neither of these things are bad. Dictionary skills are definitely very useful, but definitions don't really cut it. So let's look at an example of the meaning of the word mine, M-I-N-E, as used in kindergarten by a very popular dictionary that educators across the world use. Mine, as a pronoun, is defined as the one or ones that belong to me, a possessive form of I. This is a problem because this definition is actually more difficult than the word. It's easier to explain the word in a different way to students rather than having them memorize this dictionary definition, which will probably not make much sense to them. And finally, a third traditional vocabulary teaching strategy that we're aware of is the use of vocabulary drills. Now, this comes up in different ways in different classrooms. Students are asked to memorize the meanings of words, and then they're given quizzes, writing drills, spelling drills, definition drills. Again, this is a good strategy once in a while. Students do need to memorize and they do need to practice, but this is not enough to ensure deep learning of this vocabulary. What should we do to ensure active learning of vocabulary? One of the first strategies is having rich oral conversations with students. Oral language is the foundation of reading, writing, vocabulary, and grammar skills. And so, using words in conversation with students is one of the best ways to ensure that they know what these words mean and how they are used. Look up lists of words called tier 2 words. These are more sophisticated forms of words that we use every day. For example, wonderful is a tier 2 form of the word good. Observe is a tier 2 form of the word see. These are words that students will likely not come across in stories or books that they're reading at that age, but they should know the meaning of in order to improve their vocabulary. So, incorporate tier 2 words in your oral conversations with students and see how their vocabulary improves. The next strategy is ensuring repeated exposure in many different ways. There's a lot of research that shows that anyone needs to be exposed to the same word at least 12 different times in different ways. This doesn't mean that we have to get students to write the word and its meaning 12 times in their notebook. That is just one way of exposure. Different ways of exposure include using it in conversation, using it to share an anecdote, using it in a song, using it in writing to write about different experiences. As long as students are getting at least 12 different exposures to that word in different ways over time, that ensures that word becomes part of their inner vocabulary. The third strategy is helping students understand the rich relationships between words. A word can mean the same as another, like scared and afraid. They can mean similar things, like scared and terrified. Or they can mean complete opposite, like scared and brave. There are words that name, there are words that tell us about actions, there are words that describe. Helping students understand the relationships between these words helps them process them more deeply and really improves their vocabulary in the way that they're using them in everyday conversation and in their writing. There are different ways of getting students to do this by making them fill in word maps, by making them draw, by making them act out different connotations of the same word. So this is an extremely useful but a slightly tough vocabulary teaching strategy that will definitely ensure that your students learn this extremely deeply. Vocabulary teaching and learning is often seen as a very dull, dry, boring topic in schools, both by teachers and by students. But using these active teaching and learning strategies will definitely make vocabulary one of the funnest part of your day.
Thanks for tuning into T Pedagogy Power Ups. Don't forget to show your support by liking our videos and hitting that subscribe button.